All right, guys, this is the Watchwell podcast. My name is Parker. This is my co-host, Nick. We are going to watch The Office, the pilot episode through the lens of truth. So buckle up. We've got a lot to talk about. Let's jump into this real quick.
All right, done deal. Thank you very much, sir. You're a gentleman and a scholar. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. My mistake. That was a woman I was talking to. So, she had a very low voice. Probably a smoker.
Okay, so let's pause that there, and I think we've got a few things to talk about. Could we make that joke today?
Okay. That one, I think so. There are definitely others.
You think?
I don't think that one would be a big deal.
With the gender
I don't think that one would
ideologies?
be a big deal. There are definitely others that would turn people off.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I get what you're saying. I don't think I'm just really object to. There's always going to be somebody that objects to it, but by and large, I think that one would have made it in.
Okay. All right.
Plenty of jokes that wouldn't have made it in, and probably even in this episode.
All right.
But I think that one, would have been all right. What do you disagree with that?
I don't know, man. I think people get really, really worked up over stuff like that these days with the whole gender ideology thing, and you can be whoever you want. I think that one would be a problem. I think it's that bad. Not that bad as in terms of the joke is that bad, but I think that that the way people get their feelings hurt and have gone after much, much less recently, with Will Smith popping off with Chris Rock and just with cancel culture and different things like that. So I don't know. I don't think this joke is welcomed in present time. But that's just my take.
You don't? I think it would have made it. I think it would have made it in.
All right. Fair enough.
For forever, right, Pam?
Well, I don't know.
If you think she's cute now, you should have seen her a couple of years ago.
What?
Any messages?
All right, hold off there for a second.
Yeah, just a fact.
All right.
So already we've got what I would call the three most important characters in the show. Would you agree with that? Michael, Jim, Pam. And we've met all of them.
Yeah.
And maybe you can throw Dwight in there, but in terms of the story, like the actual storylines that play out throughout the entire series, 9 seasons or 7 seasons if you're talking about Michael, like these are the three most important characters in the show. Do you think that?
Yeah.
I don't think it's an accident. They're the ones introduced right up front, too.
No, I got to agree with you on that.
We already know that Michael is kind of an incompetent boss, right? We've already learned that based on his interaction there with Jim. We've already kind of gotten the feel that Jim is, not really all in. When we get more of that later.
Mm-hmm.
So we've already gotten that aspect of Jim's character, and now we have Pam's just straight up annoyance right here with what Michael is, talking to her about and his tone and his joking and all of that stuff. And so, I mean, I just think it does a really good job of setting the stage for that.
Yep.
Oh.
And now we have Dwight.
No
gifts for you. My job is to speak to clients on the phone about quantities and type of copy or paper. Whether we can supply it to them, whether they can pay for it, and I'm boring myself just talking about this.
So there with Jim, we've got him talking about just how mundane, boring, ordinary his job is. I think that's probably one of the more relatable things, because I think everybody at some point questions whether what they do for a living matters, and people really want to know that what they're doing matters, right? Like, you want to know that you're having some type of you have some type of value and importance. And Jim's here talking about how he doesn't see that at all in his day-to-day work, right? And to me, that sets the stage for all the joking that he does, his focus on Pam, his, things that we learn later about Jim. That fact right there, I don't see any meaning whatsoever in my work. That sets the stage for like so much that we see from Jim later, but is also just incredibly relatable. Because everyone wants to know that their work matters.
Right.
And it's probably most difficult to see that when it seems just incredibly ordinary. Like, it's really easy to see God be glorified in our work, to see that our work matters when, we're the missionary traveling overseas into hostile countries and trying to share the gospel, and we feel the risk of that. And it's really easy when you're the pastor who's standing up and preaching and you're doing all these, cool things and trying to reach people. But what about the person who's a 9-to-5 guy and just goes and sits at a desk and makes phone calls? Does he matter? Does his work matter? Does it glorify God to do that? And that's, the answer is yes. Of course it matters. Of course it glorifies God. Of course you can glorify God in the work that you do, even if it's ordinary and mundane and sometimes seems pointless and not all that exciting. But of course you can glorify God in all those things. But that's an incredibly relatable desire, and that's something that the Bible speaks to, is glorifying God in everything that we do, including those ordinary, basic things that we do, even if they're not exciting for us.
Yeah, that's really good, man. Ready to keep going?
Yep.
Yeah, that was a joke. That was a joke that was actually my brother's, and it was supposed to be with Bill's, and it doesn't work great with faxes.
Do you want to look at mine?
Yeah, I would. Thank you.
Okay, so since the last meeting, Alan and the board have decided that we can't justify a Scranton branch and a Stanford branch.
Oh, okay.
Okay, no, Michael,
No,
don't panic.
No. This is good.
No.
This is good.
Michael,
this is fine.
Listen, okay,
Excellent.
don't panic.
All
We
the
haven't
alarm
made
bells
any-
are kind of going.
We haven't made any decisions yet. I've spoken to Josh and Stanford.
Okay.
I've told him the same as you, and it's up to either you or him to convince me that your branch could incorporate the other.
Okay, no problem.
This does, however, mean that there's going to be downsizing.
Me no want to hear that, Jan, because downsizing.
All right, I got a question for you.
It is a real.
Okay.
What is the most important thing to Michael Scott?
So obviously this is a comedy. So every attribute of the characters are going to be portrayed over dramatic for comedy's sake.
Exaggerated.
It's going to be exaggerated. Yeah. Okay. So
extremes.
with that being said, I think every single person struggles with what Michael struggles with on varying degrees. But the most important thing to Michael is that he wants to be liked, and by everyone. He wants to be the guy.
Yeah.
And we all want to be the guy. And I my thoughts on that are, you can take that two different ways. You can take that as we want to be liked because we have a void that can't be filled with anything other than Jesus, his sacrifice, and the sufficiency of his sacrifice, and the love that only God can give. Or you can take that a different way, to where the fork in the road would be our sinful nature, to where our own self-righteousness, right? And I think that it's really hard. I think it's really hard to discern. I think Michael portrays both, to be honest. I think it's hard to portray sometimes which one is which fork in the road he's going. I think that we're going to be introduced to Todd Packard here, and I think that that's going to be more of the depraved self-righteousness. I want to be the it guy, don't really care about anybody else. But when he's with Jim and Pam, I think you see a different side of Michael, and he wants to be liked by Jim and Pam, and it's more innocent. And he's got a better heart behind what he does, because, it's like the golden retriever that just overloves you almost. You know what I mean? That dog that I just love you because I love you and I can't help but love you, and it's just overbearing.
Right.
I think that there's a good duality, I guess. Would that be the right word? In Michael's character. If we're looking at it through the lens of truth, or if we're looking at it through scripturally, there's two ways to look at it. And I think that you have the depraved, self-righteous, I want people to like me, and then you also have the I want people to love me because there's a void that needs to be filled.
Yeah. In a sense, it's Michael's idolatry is other people's view of him.
Yes.
His acceptance, his how much he's liked, how do they, who buys themselves the world's best boss mug.
Right. Absolutely.
Who would do that? And he's his idol is acceptance and the acceptance of others. And I think you could actually probably look at every character of The Office and kind of identify what idols they have. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Michael's acceptance, Jim wants desperately not to be included in the weirdness of The Office. He doesn't want to be like, he wants to be kind of he represents normal.
He does,
right?
Yeah.
And he doesn't. Anytime he kind of gets close to becoming the weirdness of everyone else, he backs away, and he doesn't want to be a part of that. But he wants to represent normal. And we could go down the list of all the characters. I'm not saying we're going to do that, but
Kevin is gluttony.
Yeah.
Stanley's laziness, adultery.
Adultery.
There's so many. And we could probably do a whole episode on Dwight's what's Dwight's girlfriend?
Angela.
Yeah, Angela. Could probably do a whole episode on Angela.
So that actually brings up a good point, because she's the one at least identified as a Christian in the show.
Yeah, I don't know if they come out and say it. At least I don't remember. But she's definitely got some type of religion that is a cross between, I would say, Christian, Amish,
in a way, yeah.
In a way. Or at least wherever the heck Dwight comes from with that Austrian, German, old school heritage. I don't know what that's supposed to be. That's the best way I can describe it.
Do you think that this is how non-Christians view their Christian coworkers?
Well, that's also an interesting point, because and I'm probably going to fire a lot of people up, but I don't think there are a lot of people who actually communicate their faith well, and I think that's why we get that label.
Yeah.
I think that we have done a really poor job, at least this is just from my experience with, my experience in the church, and, it's difficult. Nick, recently, even with this podcast, I've dug more into apologetics. I've dug more into the Bible for my own sake, and I got to a point where I was just tired of basing my faith off of what I learned in Christian high school. That's not a firm foundation of faith that we're supposed to have, that we're instructed, and I got tired of it. So, it's interesting. You start learning how to communicate your faith, and you start learning and memorizing the scriptures and keeping it close. You develop what it does in you, and maybe this is a part of a sanctification type of thing, but what it does in you is it allows you to feel more confident in how to express your faith in the proper way biblically. A lot of people think that apologetics and preaching on the street corner is when you start talking about that stuff, a lot of people go straight to people holding up a sign that says you're going to burn in hell, and then the opposite of that is it's only grace and mercy on Sunday mornings from the platform. So I think that there's an in between that we're missing as Christians, and in the workplace, when you don't know how to do that, but you do these things, it becomes very traditional. And that's what we see in Angela and Dwight is it's just tradition for tradition's sake. And what does that make you think of? What I mean, for me, just tradition for tradition's sake is very equivalent to the Pharisees. But inside the church, that's not what we're doing. We just don't know how to explain it to, the people that are our neighbors and, share a cubicle with. So,
and instead of articulating the gospel, instead of articulating what actually allows somebody to have a relationship with God, to be acceptable to God, we communicate all the things that prevent us.
It's just really easy. That. Yeah, it's if you don't know how to communicate it well, because what I'm not saying is we should avoid the judgment, not that we are judging, because the Bible calls us not to judge those that aren't believers, but communicate it in a way for them to understand that, hey, this is you judging yourself against God's perfect law. And if you can't hold up to it, which no one can, then that gives them the need for a savior. And putting it in those terms says, wait a minute, I'm just like you. I was just like you. The only difference between the two of us is I have accepted Jesus and you haven't. Come on this side of the table. We're both sinners. But if you just say you're going to burn in hell, or if you communicate it poorly, it's just, oh, Christians are judgmental. I think that's where a lot of that comes from, and then that's when you get over dramatizations of the Christian or the religious person, Angela, in the that's just the prude, but still cheats on her husband later in the show. It's just a poor name for Christians, well, actually, and I think it's a lot on us.
Right, she's doing that while engaged. They aren't married, right? So it's
well, the senator, they get married
later. Yeah, they do. Yeah, so it's with her husband too.
But to your point,
a lot of other issues.
With before that, to your point, they're having premarital sex. So that's also obviously against God's law, and there's a lot of issues with that because of the biggest one being if you get pregnant and have a child, then mom and dad aren't united, not a union there for the betterment of the children and safe raising and rearing of children, like all that stuff. So among other things.
Yeah, Angela being the Christian rather than actually loving the people of her office well, what she does is just constantly communicate her annoyance or dissatisfaction with what they're doing.
Yeah.
Right.
While not living up to her own standard.
Right. The Pharisees were a perfect comparison there because she has a standard that she's holding everyone else to, but she's not even living up to that standard.
Right. All right, let's jump back in.
How long do we have to act? Oh, Todd Packer, terrific rep. Do you mind if I take it? Pac-Man.
Hey, big queen.
Oh, that's not appropriate.
Hey, is old Godzilla coming in today?
I don't know what you mean.
Look, I've been meaning to ask her one question. Does the match the...
Oh my God! Oh, that's horrifying. Horrible person.
So Todd Packer, his introduction right there comes in with that incredibly crude joke, right? That's who Todd Packer is. He's that guy, right?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on his character, but even that scene? So, what are your thoughts?
Well, the character. We'll start with the character of Todd Packer. I would say that. Well, I have a few thoughts actually. Can I take it a couple of different ways? Is that cool?
Yeah, however you want.
Okay, so the first way would be, I think if we look at this, if we put his character up against the Bible, he is the Pharaoh that has been given, like his heart's been hardened. He's been given over to his own depravity. As it talks about in Romans, he is in essence the bottom of the barrel. He adds no value to anyone around him. He is self-absorbed, no care in the world about others, to the point to where even his character's existence as being written into the show is in question. I don't even think that if you remove him from the show, you actually lose a thing. But I think that's also the point for his character. So, it's a relatability factor. Everybody has that person that they work with, that there's always one person that is that makes you dread going to work the next day. Always. Most people can relate to that guy. And if you can't, you're probably that guy. And you should repent and actually love and care for your coworkers. Love God, love neighbor. So those are some of my thoughts about the character itself. Yeah. In terms of the scene, I think it's interesting because watching the pilot episode over again, I think it's interesting that Michael acknowledges in front of Pam and Jan that he's a terrible person. Right before or right after he said that he's a great sales rep. So I was actually going to ask you, Nick, if you think that he's being legitimate in him saying that he's a terrible person, or is he putting on a show for the women? And then also, is he profound enough to distinguish Packard's ability to sell things and him being a terrible person? Did that question come through clearly enough?
I think, I think so. So I think he's definitely putting on a show, because especially at this point in the series, because we've already established his willingness, his desire to be accepted. I think he's putting on a show. I don't think he's actually shocked or offended by the joke that's told there. I think he's more worried about the perception of him if he were to laugh at it, or if he were to just accept it. Because I think, so I agree with everything you said about Packer, except for I think he's probably more important to the show than what you give him credit for.
Okay.
Not because his character itself is important, but because of what his character means to Michael. Because all throughout the show, part of Michael's immaturity is his tolerance of Packer, right?
I still think
of Packer.
You don't think that he you don't think Sorry, go ahead.
No, his desire to be liked by specifically Todd Packard. And then one of the moments that show you that Michael's matured later in the show is when he actually goes against Packard. Right? When he's dating Holly, and Holly's really offended by what Packard's saying, and he finally, for the first time ever, that's kind of what makes this scene a little bit almost out of place, because he goes against him here too. But that's the arc of Michael's maturity is all right there in relation to that character.
Okay. Do you think that it's fair to say that Packard is the antithesis to Jim?
In what way? Can you explain that?
Michael wants to either be like Packard or Jim.
Sure. Yeah, I could see that.
You think maybe that's why they wrote him as like a character? Because you're saying that he's more important to the franchise as than I'm giving him credit for. The only way that I could think that would be true is if he is literally so, like, because what you're saying is, logically speaking, correct me if I'm wrong, please, but I think this is important, even if the video goes long a little bit. But I think that what you're saying is, if Michael is so or so much idolizing the need to be liked and the affection of others, if he's that gone in his idolization of that to the point to where there's no basis for any morality by saying that, oh, he's a terrible person. If you're saying that even that is a joke, then Michael can't stand on his own in anything.
Yeah, and I think you see that play out.
I mean, the Bible talks about chaff blowing wildly. You're moving with the waves. There's no ground.
Double-minded,
yeah,
and unstable.
Yeah, there's no grounding. There's no grounding of any truth, and I think that can very well be seen through Michael. When Packer's around, he's going to be like him, but then when other people are around, he's going to turn his back on those that he wouldn't have otherwise, just to save himself.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good. I think that maybe that's a good point.
And if you do think about it, to respond to what you said about Michael either wanting to be like Todd Packard or Jim, they are the only two in the show that he ever actually tries to be friends with, like actually puts his own effort to initiate his friendship with them.
Yeah.
So like he ends up being best friends with Dwight, but he never wanted to be.
Right.
Well,
Dwight is kind of himself, but then Dwight's idolization is of the manager position.
Yeah,
itself.
For sure.
It's the title.
Power.
It's power.
Yeah.
So that's the only reason why I think he coddles up to Michael is because he wants power.
But by the end of it, they're, spoilers.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
But by the end of it, it's Michael who shows up last minute at Dwight's wedding to be the best man, right? So that's a relationship that happened almost by accident, right? That friendship is something that happens by accident. Whereas Michael actively tries to befriend Jim, regardless of how much Jim tries to not let it happen.
Yeah.
And then he also actively tries to be like, or at least accept and befriend Todd Packard.
Right.
And I don't think there's anyone else in the show that he does that with.
I can't think of any either. So, cool. Well, let's jump back in.
Am I going to tell them? No, I'm not going to tell them. I don't see the point of that. As a doctor, you would not tell a patient if they had cancer.
Initial thoughts straight
you
from
you were going to.
Yeah, straight from there. I want your initial thoughts on that specific line.
That you wouldn't tell that again goes back to the desire to be liked. And I think what popped into your head, and I might be wrong, but I'm going to try to guess what you were going to say.
Okay.
And so I think what popped into your mind was the tendency of Christians to avoid talking about sin.
Yes.
To not tell people that they have a sin nature, that they need a savior because of their own. A savior because of that. So I think that's where you're going with that. Am I right?
You are correct. Yes.
And it's because for the same reason Michael does it.
It's the same thing.
It's because we don't want to be disliked or afraid. It's the exact same thing.
It's deception in its truest form. Not telling someone you would say it's a bad doctor to not talk about. It would be bad for a doctor to say, I'm not going to tell a cancer patient they have cancer and give them the necessary treatment in order to, in form of medication, in order to save their life. And maybe this is an old similarity or an old metaphor, but it doesn't devalue the truth that it carries. And I think that it's very, very important to encourage other Christians to talk about their faith, talk about sin as a real thing. It is real. If you're hearing this for the first time, it is real. All of us, even Christians, there's been no true saving faith believing Christian that doesn't believe that they themselves are a guilty sinner. And if you've met a Christian that doesn't profess that, and has made you feel judged and has looked down upon you, that either by poorly communicating to you or out of their own self-righteousness just thinks that they're better, I would like to apologize on behalf of them and the rest of us. And I don't want to be over dramatic, but it is true. Sin is real, and that talking about sin is what gives people, getting them to understand their sin, talking about sin gets them to understand why they need a savior. And there's a lot of other stuff that can go in there too. But not talking about it makes us feel comfortable, and it is a comfortable road to destruction.
Yeah, so for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God, right?
Amen.
And then 1 John in chapter 1, it says, if anyone claims to be without sin, he's a liar, and the light is not in him.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
Sin is in common with all all humanity has that aspect of our nature in common, and it takes Jesus and his righteousness to cut off that sin nature and to make us something new, and allow us to live righteously with him, in relationship with him, and to have eternal life. So
It's so good. That's so good. And that's the call of the gospel. The call of the gospel is sin is real. They're not just mistakes. It's not every human is erred. Every human is, everyone makes mistakes. I mean, these are something that's been convicting me lately is how deceptive we are, because that's what Romans talks about, is we're self-deceived. We deceive ourselves. Everyone makes mistakes. No, let's use the right language. Let's say it what it is. Like, everyone sins. Sin. The word sin itself carries a heavier weight because it's a falling short of a moral standard that is objective. Of an ultimate standard. It's an ultimate standard. If you just make a mistake, it's okay. I'm not. That's not going to send me to hell. I mean, those are justifications and self-deceptions. I can't remember who said it. So if someone listens to this and knows the quote, throw it in the comments. But I think it was in a debate with Jeff Durbin from Apologia Church and two other. I can't remember who it was, if it was him or not, but it may have been Bonson, or I don't know. But they said an inch away from Jesus is a victory for the enemy. Mm-hmm. An inch. And we are, and in another debate, I know this was in a debate with a colleague of Jeff or someone, I can't remember his name, but he said that a true friend doesn't walk towards a cliff with you and tell you that they like your jacket and shoes.
Right.
A true friend tells you, stop, there's a cliff. Mm-hmm. And I think that goes really, really well with the doctor metaphor, where you don't need a relationship with someone for X amount of time. That's not wrong if you do, and then you evangelize to them after a certain amount of time. But the more and more we wait, the less and less potential time that we have, because nobody knows when their clock is going to stop. Mm-hmm. So, and I think that's it's humbling, is what it is.
Yep. Yep.
Sorry for the rant, but that one's big to me.
Guilty. Guilty as charged.
Ryan, Howard from the Temp Agency.
Uh-huh.
Daniqua sent me down to start today.
Howard. Like Mo Howard. Three Stooges.
Yep.
Watch this. This is Mo. Right here. Three Stooges. High five. Oh, Pam. It's a guy thing, Pam. I'm sort of a student of comedy. Watch this. Here we go. I'm Hitler. Adolf Hitler.
Okay. I don't know if this is going to actually make the edit, but Nick, if hang on. If we look at Colossians 3, chapter 3, verse 8, this is just something that, I've been thinking about. Right. Someone at church asked me, and I have an answer, but I'm not sure if it's the right answer. If you beat me there, go ahead and read it.
Okay, I'm getting there. Flipping pages.
Right. It's an easy one to miss.
What did you say? Chapter what?
I think it's 3 verse 8. Let me double check here.
I'll go ahead and read verse 8, just and you can tell me if that's what you're looking for or not.
Okay.
But now you must put them all away: anger, wrath, malice, slander, obscene talk from your mouth.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Yeah, no, that one's good. And then I think some other places in the Bible it says, to some, like, paraphrasing, it says, rid yourself of filthy language. Don't use filthy language is kind of the theme.
Yeah.
If we stay true to that, that's one thing that I kind of struggle with, because I love comedy. I love, like, I just love it. How do you balance keeping to those things? Love God, love neighbor. If you do those two things, you fulfill the law and all that. And we talk about having saving faith. It changes you. You become a new creation. How do you, like? I would like you to define filthy language, or what did it say? It said obscene talk from your mouth, in reference to comedy.
Wow.
And I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot. So
to go along with that, you have Ephesians 5:4, and I was actually planning on bringing up Ephesians 5:4, which is almost identical to what we just read in Colossians, but it says, let there be no filthiness, nor foolish talk, nor crude joking, which are out of place, but instead let there be thanksgiving. So, I take that for what it is. I mean, I think we know a filthy joke when we hear it. Like, we know, and to go along with that, right before that, I don't want to just take that verse,
we don't want to prove
pull
text.
it out. But
you said Ephesians
right
what?
Before that, Ephesians 5. So if we're looking at Ephesians 5, starting in verse 1, it says, therefore be, which that kind of calls us to go back even before that, but therefore be imitators of God as beloved children, and walk in love as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us, a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God. But sexual immorality and all impurity or covetousness must not even be named among you, as is proper among saints. And then from there, let there be no filthiness, nor foolish talk, nor crude joking, which are out of place, but instead let there be thanksgiving. I think
which are out of place might be telling.
Which are out of place. There is not a place for that among God's people. Right? There is not a place for the crude and filthy joking among God's people. Now, I could hear and see an argument for some value in stories, whether comedic or otherwise. Like, I know your question was really more towards comedy.
Well, it was, but I have friends that we joke around and do, certain things. It's not crazy, but I guess my answer was, it depends on the relationship, I think, with who you have. And the out of place, I don't know if this is saying it's out of place, like, period, like God's people as you read it, or if it was out of place in regards to that particular relationship. Because one gesture to someone is not the same as a gesture to someone else, if that makes any sense. So if I have a buddy and we're joking, we're laughing, we're having a good time, and I flip him off or something like that, and he flips me off, it doesn't mean the same as if I have road rage and I flip someone off driving down the highway, as an example.
So what does it mean?
It's more of a, I guess it would mean more of an endearing thing instead of with the anger and the malice in the other example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean,
no differently than as Christians, we can sit here and we can enjoy watching The Office when there's crude joking going on, and we watch the entire show of The Office,
Right.
and as Christians we participate in that, how do you, or even with coworkers and developing relationships as leaders, doing certain things and not doing certain things. I mean, I guess everybody has their limit, and I think that there is an overboard and there is a misstep, but I think that's why the responsibility on the Christian is to truly know those relationships and know what's professional in certain settings, what's a little bit more, I don't know the word, relaxed. But it's interesting to me. It's hard for me to draw the line sometimes. I don't know what is okay and what is not all the time. If I'm just being transparent.
Yeah, I just think it's anything that can be commonly understood as crude.
Okay. So does that mean any word that resembles the like a swear word? You know, if you just take a filler word like crap, is that crude?
Sure.
Because people know what you're substituting for.
Right. Everything has to have context.
Yeah.
Like everything you say has context. And generally speaking, people understand the context of words when they, when it's not posted on social media.
That's fair. Or in a text message.
Yeah, or in a text message. But when you're saying things, generally people understand the context of words. And I think it's anything that would be like commonly understood as crude or filthy language, which is obviously part of The Office, right?
Yeah.
There is. So your point still is, how do we watch it and justify that? And it really depends. I think it depends on the person. It depends on the lens that we're watching it through. So I think what we're doing right now, we're not just watching an episode of The Office just simply for enjoyment or entertainment's sake to turn off our brain and just take it for what it is. We're actually looking for themes and underlying things in The Office, even though it's comedy, because it's all there. And you can, if you're willing, there's somewhat, and I say somewhat, I don't mean it's like out there in the forefront and incredibly prominent, but if you watch The Office, there's somewhat of a redemptive story arc there. And as the story plays out, you see growth, you see maturity happen, you see
forgiveness,
a lot of forgiveness, you see a lot of different things taking place. And I think sometimes what I was going to get at is I can see a case for some of those things being present in a story because of what they can lead to and the fact that they're real. Like, that is how people speak and joke. And if we completely avoid all of that, then what we end up with is just your paint by numbers Christian movie that is incredibly cheesy and doesn't actually help anybody. It's not powerful at all. It just,
because it's not real.
It's just right, because it's not real. So sometimes you need to demonstrate our tendency to sin in a real way. Now, there's things that you shouldn't include, right? There's things that shouldn't be there and that Christians shouldn't consume. I don't want to go into a list or anything like that, but those things exist too. So you have to be kind of careful and judge, and it comes back to the lens that you're watching it through. Like, if I'm watching something through the lens of Christ, then even if I really like the story of something, if it's basically softcore porn, I'm going to stop watching it.
Right.
Even if I love the story and I'm really engrossed in it and want to see it. Like, I want to know how it ends.
Yeah.
But if I'm watching it through the lens of truth, if it's basically softcore porn, I'm going to turn it off and stop watching.
# Game of Thrones.
There you go. Yeah, and that's actually an example. I started watching Game of Thrones shortly after it came out, and me and a bunch of buddies really got into it. And I am not kidding. I really liked the show. But then I just felt conviction and stopped watching it. And I haven't seen an episode since. So it's probably been, 10 years. That's an estimate since I've actually watched an episode of Game of Thrones. And I really liked it. I really liked the story and the way they did.
I couldn't get past the first or second season or something like that.
Yeah. So that's a really good example of something that is probably not the best to consume because
Right.
of what you're seeing on the screen.
Unless you're watching it on VidAngel.
Right.
Shout out to VidAngel.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's jump back in.
$6 million man, Steve Austin. Actually, that would be a good salary for me, don't you think? $6 million? Memo to Jan. I deserve a raise.
Don't we all?
I'm sorry.
It's nothing.
If you're unhappy with your compensation, maybe you should take it up with HR. Okay? Not today, okay? Pam, just be professional.
He's definitely... He does not fit the mold of a leader, as we know it.
Yeah. He's the one who brings up the topic. And he scolds salary for me $6 million.
But there are people in positions of authority that do that.
I deserve a raise.
Me.
And then Pam says, "Oh yeah, don't we all deserve a raise?" Instead of laughing and say, "She probably reach out to HR."
It becomes a serious thing.
That is incredibly
Not today,
demeaning.
Pam. Not today. Be professional. Man. It's just terrible.
Right.
Do you mind if I go out for a drink with these guys?
No, come on. Let's get out of here. Go home.
Okay.
Okay. Let's stop there. Any
All
thoughts? Any thoughts initially?
Roy is the worst kind of like boyfriend, significant other, or fiance. Because he has like this control over Pam. So, but the flip side of that is just the fact that she asked permission, I don't think is necessarily a bad thing.
Okay. So then I guess the follow-up would that be, why would she have to ask permission?
Not see that's the thing. Having to and doing it are two different things.
Agreed. Definitely agree.
Right. So the relationship between Pam and Roy is very much that she has to. She has to ask permission. Right.
Now, but see, I still think that there's a difference there, because who is doing the enforcing of making the decision? Like,
what do you mean?
So like who's, because you said Roy is controlling.
Yeah.
Or is it Pam over submitting?
Well, I mean that's there too, but
because I guess from my thoughts are they're not married yet.
Yeah.
So what authority, like what true authority does he have over her?
None.
Exactly. So I guess the takeaway from this is until marriage, you are single.
Mm-hmm.
Like you have no I mean it's. Yeah, I just thought that was important to point out, because if you have any other expectation, or not expectation, maybe that's the wrong word, but if you have any other standard going in, I guess standard may be a better word, of going in, that you're like, once you're engaged, then you're already getting married, and things start to progress too fast. And I'm not talking in a physical way, but I'm talking like you start acting like you're married before you actually are. There's no actual authority there.
If you live with somebody, if you live with your significant other before you're married, you're just pretending to be married.
Yes. You're
not preparing for marriage. You're just pretending to be something that you're not.
Right. And yeah, you're pretending to be something you're not. You're deceiving yourself without any of the actual accountability.
Right.
So I thought that was important. Roy doesn't have any actual authority over her. She's still submitting. I think, to your point, that asking is not the same as being forced to ask.
Mm-hmm.
That's also important, because I do think that there is some validity in, once you are engaged, progressing towards marriage, there are things that need to happen in terms of a progression towards the end goal. Like,
sure.
you want to act like the wife or husband that you're going to be, in order to, Like, there's a difference between being the wife that you need to be married and being the husband you need to be before you're married, but not pretending to be married. Does that make sense? Am I explaining that well?
Yeah. It's not a role play.
It's not
right?
a role play, but you're doing it for
trial.
yourself. Yeah.
It's not a 6-month or in their case 3-year trial run to see if you're actually going to get married.
Right. You need to be you, and you need to be ready for marriage individually, but not pretending to actually be married because there's no actual authority.
Yeah.
So, have you felt the vibe yet? We work hard, we play hard. Sometimes we play hard when we should be working hard, right? I guess the atmosphere that I've created here is that I'm a friend first and a boss second.
They said, and that works so well, being a friend first, a boss second.
Technically it does, because they outsell every other branch. They outperform every other branch almost every quarter.
Right. True. True. There is some genius there. So let's actually talk about that, because the show definitely goes in extremes, right?
Right.
So Michael is on the extreme end of
terrible.
That friend first, boss second, entertainer third. But the show still portrays it like they're the best branch, right? So what does that tell us about leadership in general? Like, if you're trying to lead people to a productive outcome, whatever that goal might be, sales, whatever it is, like, what does this extreme example, what might that tell us about leadership?
I don't actually know where you're going.
I mean, I don't know if I have anywhere that I'm going, but
the first thing that popped into my head was that it's actually not the leader that does the work.
Yeah,
it's the people below the leader that usually do the work.
Yeah, and just one thing that I think it points out is that to some degree, leaders have a tendency to be overbearing and micromanage and because they don't want their their performance review or whatever to be bad if their employees' performance review is bad, or if their employees' performance isn't up to par. That looks bad on the leader, so leaders will jump in too far. Like, they'll get too involved in things, they'll get too into the details, rather than just saying, you know what, I trust you to do what you're assigned to do, and I'm just gonna let you do it. I'm going to let you do what you are an expert in. You were hired for this job. I'm going to allow you to do it.
And I'm going to allow you to do it, but if you need anything, my job is to supply the resources.
Exactly. Yeah. If you need coaching, if you need something, if you need help in some way, if there's something that would help you do your job better, if there's, all of those things need to be present for sure.
As you know, there's going to be downsizing, and you have made my life so much easier in that I am going to have to let you go first.
What? Why?
Why? Well, theft and stealing.
Stealing?
Mm-hmm.
What am I supposed to have stolen?
Post-it notes.
Post-it notes?
Yeah, God.
What are those worth, like 50 cents?
50 cents, yeah. You steal 1,000 Post-it notes at 50 cents a piece, and, you've made a profit margin. Go run us out of business, Pam.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I am.
I can't believe this. I mean, I've never even stolen as much as a paperclip, and now you're firing me.
But the best thing about it is that, we're not going to have to give you any severance pay. Because that is gross misconduct, and so just clean out your desk. I'm sorry.
Okay. So his maturity level is wrapped up in his inability to think ahead.
Yeah.
Like, it's just total negligence of any type of awareness. And Like what
No
did he
awareness
like?
whatsoever.
What did he think was going to happen? Not only what did he think was going to happen during the joke, right? But then after he says psych here in a second, that she was going to think it's funny.
Right. That she was just gonna laugh
Wow,
and join in.
cool,
on
Michael, good one. And let's go back to work.
Yeah.
No, like,
Yeah.
so I think because you mentioned his maturity level earlier, and this right here completely sums it up, where he's just totally gone with any level of awareness.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, that's going to complete the episode of the Office, the first episode, the pilot. We want to thank you guys for checking out the Watchwell podcast. We are pretty much everywhere. We're on Google Podcasts. We're on Spotify, iTunes, anywhere any platform that you enjoy your podcasting on. Nick and I want to extend a thank you for tuning into the episode. Check us out on Facebook. Hit us up on social media: Facebook, Instagram, Parler, Rumble. We're everywhere. And then, if you wouldn't mind, if you enjoyed the episode, if it brought any value to you, check us out. Subscribe on YouTube if you would, please. And leave comments, definitely everywhere. Leave comments on all the socials. We wanna hear your guys' opinion. Join in on the conversations. If you have any scripture references, note those and write what you guys think about the different characters. Let us know other movies that you'd want to see. Nick, anything else? Final thoughts?
Nope, that is all. We just very much appreciate anyone who's taken the time to consume the content. Encourage anyone who wants to see it grow and wants to see value to added to others, then please support us. Please help us do that. But also not just monetarily, but by commenting and sharing and all of those things like you've already said.
And if you do want to give monetarily, we would really appreciate it. You can check us out on Patreon. We do have a Patreon page. It's just the Watchwell Podcast, and we would appreciate that. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time.